It was a crisp October weekend when Abby and I arrived at the long-abandoned lighthouse on the rugged coastline of Maine. The biting wind whipped through the trees, and the scent of salt water clung to the air, as if the ocean itself was trying to warn us of something. We had been invited by an elderly historian named Professor Hargrove, who was eager to share his research on the mysterious disappearance of a lightkeeper who had vanished decades ago under strange circumstances. The locals said that the spirit of the man still haunted the lighthouse, guiding lost ships through the thick fog and treacherous waters, though at a terrible price. The professor's stories had intrigued us from the start. He spoke of an eerie, inexplicable phenomenon, a lantern that would glow at random times, casting an unnatural light over cliffs, as though someone or something was still watching over the sea. The legend was clear, however. Those who ventured near the lighthouse would feel a sense of dread, as if the very air around them grew thick with sorrow. But we were investigators. We were here to uncover the truth, no matter how unsettling it might be. We arrived just as a storm began to brew on the horizon. The sky darkened, and the wind began to howl through the trees like a chorus of mournful voices. Abby, ever the optimistic one, glanced at me as she grabbed her equipment bag. "This is going to be a good one," she said, though I could hear the uncertainty beneath her words. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I believed her. Something about this place felt different from our usual investigations. Maybe it was the isolation of the lighthouse, sitting at the edge of the world, or the storm that was now raging outside. Or maybe it was a strange sense of foreboding that clung to the place like a second skin. We made our way up the rocky path to the lighthouse, its silhouette looming against the darkening sky, like a forgotten monument to the past. The lighthouse itself was in poor condition, its paint chipped and weathered, the windows cracked and boarded up. Inside, it was even worse. The air was thick with dust, and the musty scent of old wood and mildew filled our lungs. We made our way into the keeper's quarters and set up our equipment. Cameras, EVP recorders, and motion sensors, all of it capturing the energy that lingered in the air. As we settled in for the night, Abby turned to me, her face pale but determined. "I'm going to try to reach out to the spirit," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, knowing that Abby's gift with EVP recordings was the best I'd ever seen. She had a way of getting spirits to speak, even when they were reluctant. She began her ritual, speaking softly into the recorder, asking the spirit to make its presence known. "Is anyone here with us? If you're here, we want to help." For the first few hours, nothing. The only sound of the storm outside and the occasional creak of the old building. Abby didn't seem discouraged, though. She kept at it, asking gentle questions into the recorder. And then, just as the storm reached its peak, a faint whisper crackled through the speaker. "Thank you for remembering me." Abby froze, her eyes wide as she glanced at me. "Did you hear that?" I nodded, my heart racing. "I did." We played it back, but the voice was muffled, distant. We couldn't make out the words clearly, but it was unmistakable. There was something there, something trying to reach us. Abby didn't hesitate. She adjusted the recorder and asked, "Who are you? What do you want?" The response was soft, yet sent a chill down my spine. The voice whispered again, barely audible. "I was lost, but now I'm ready to go." I glanced at Abby. She looked as though she might faint, but she didn't let it show. "Did you get that?" she asked, her voice steady despite the fear creeping into her chest. I nodded. "Yeah, I heard it." We sat in silence for a few moments, trying to process what we just heard. The storm raged on outside, but inside, the temperature had dropped significantly. It felt as though the very air had thickened, becoming heavy with an unseen presence. We decided to investigate further. I made my way to the lantern room, the stairs creaking beneath my feet as I ascended. Abby stayed behind, continuing her EVP session in the quarters below. When I reached the top of the lighthouse, I was greeted by the sight of a faint light glowing in the distance. The lantern, which had been dark just moments before, was now shining brightly, cutting through the mist that had rolled in from the sea. I took a step closer, feeling an overwhelming sense of dread wash over me. I hesitated for a moment, but some instinct urged me to move forward. As I neared the lantern, I saw him, a man standing in the fog, his coat billowing in the wind. His face was obscured by the mist, but there was no mistaking the presence of the spirit. "Help me go home," he whispered, his voice barely audible over the howling wind. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. The man's voice was like a plea, a desperate cry for something I couldn't quite understand. I reached out, though I knew I shouldn't. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice shaking. The man's form seemed to flicker, like a candle in the wind, and for a moment, I wasn't sure if he was truly there at all. But then he spoke again, his words cutting to the fog like a blade. "I was the light keeper," he said, his voice filled with sorrow. "I died here, alone. I was lost, and I couldn't find my way home." As I stood there, frozen in fear, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't leave him like this, trapped in the lighthouse, his soul unable to find peace. I turned and called to Abby, telling her to come up to the lantern room. When she arrived, I explained everything about the lightkeeper, his tragic death, and the desperate plea he had made for help. Abby's face softened, and she immediately began scanning the room for any clues. She pulled out a journal from her bag, flipping through the pages until she found something that made her stop. "This is it," she whispered. "The answer we've been looking for." The journal detailed the lightkeeper's tragic story. He had died in a shipwreck, his body lost to the sea. But before he died, he had promised his lover he would return. But the promise remained unfulfilled, and his spirit had been left behind, trapped by his unfinished business. With the final clue in hand, Abby and I followed the spirit's directions, moving to the lighthouse and uncovering the last piece of the puzzle. As we reached a hidden passage beneath the lighthouse, we found a final note from the lightkeeper's lover, written in a trembling hand. With that, the lantern flickered one last time and extinguished, its light now gone for good. The air in the lighthouse felt lighter, somehow, as though a weight had been lifted. The storm outside had begun to die down, and as the first light of dawn broke through the clouds, we knew that the spirit of the lightkeeper had finally found peace. He had been lost for so long, but now he was free. Abby and I left the lighthouse, the eerie feeling that had plagued us from the beginning finally gone. We knew we had done something good, something that had helped a lost soul find its way home. The lighthouse would no longer be a beacon for the lost. It would stand as a monument to the memory of a man who had found his peace at last. It was late winter in 2020 when I found myself standing at the gates of Hawthorne Manor, my breath misting in the frigid air. The manor was a relic of another time, nestled in the heart of the Scottish Highlands, far away from civilization. Over the years, rumors had circulated that the mansion was haunted, but I had always been skeptical. Ghosts, to me, were mere stories, albeit compelling ones, but stories nonetheless. However, this night would change everything. As a member of a small but dedicated paranormal investigation team, I had been assigned to assist with a series of investigations, one of which was the infamous Hawthorne Manor. The house had long been abandoned, its former residents gone, and its history a blend of intrigue and tragedy. The estate was said to be haunted by benevolent spirits, particularly that of a woman named Mary, a servant who had died in the manor under mysterious circumstances. Local legends whispered that Mary still roamed the halls, her spirit lingering to protect the estate, or perhaps to seek something lost. When the team arrived, the manor was exactly as we had expected, old, dilapidated, and bathed in an eerie quiet that seemed to hang in the air. Snow had fallen heavily that day, and a blanket of white covered the ground, muffling every sound. The manor, looming behind a high iron gate, looked more like a forgotten castle than a home, its windows dark, its stone walls covered in ivy. The chill of the evening seeped through my layers of clothing as I stepped onto the estate, the ground crunching beneath my boots. We set up our equipment in the grand hall, our voices low as we checked the cameras, EVP recorders in the spirit box, an electronic device designed to pick up voices from the other side. The team was a mix of seasoned professionals and novices like myself, all of us eager to experience whatever Hawthorne Manor had to offer. The stillness of the place was palpable, almost suffocating. It felt as though the building itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. An hour passed without incident. We conducted preliminary scans of the rooms, testing the air, looking for any sign of paranormal activity. The only sounds were the occasional crackle of static from the spirit box and the steady hum of the equipment. It was during one of these scans that the box suddenly crackled to life, its usual white noise shifting into something clearer. A voice, faint and distorted, floated through the air. "Mary." It was a whisper, barely audible. I froze, exchanging uneasy glances with the others. A few murmurs of disbelief passed among us. Had we just heard that correctly? I quickly turned the dial on the spirit box, trying to tune in again. The static intensified for a moment before settling back into a clearer pattern, this time with a voice, soft, but undeniably there. "Mary." It repeated more clearly this time. "I am Mary." The room seemed to grow stiller, if that was even possible. The air felt different, almost charged, and for a brief moment, a strange calm settled over me. My heart rate slowed as the voice continued. "I am here to help. Don't be afraid." There was something soothing about the voice, something reassuring. I had expected fear, dread, something that would make my skin crawl. But instead, I felt an odd sense of peace, as if Mary's spirit was genuinely benevolent, as the legends had suggested. The team began asking questions, hoping to learn more about her, but the voice grew fainter, then fell silent. Still, no one moved. We all felt that presence in the room with us, a quiet watchfulness. It wasn't until we moved to the ballroom that the atmosphere shifted. As we stepped inside, the temperature dropped drastically. I could see my breath misting in the air, the warmth of our bodies unable to combat the sudden chill. A low hum seemed to reverberate from the walls, and once again, the spirit box crackled. The whispers began, soft, almost melodic. It was as if the very air was alive with them. Then, through the static, a new voice emerged. It was Mary again, but this time, the words were clearer, more defined. "I'm here." Suddenly, a figure materialized in the distance, barely visible in the dim light of the ballroom. My pulse quickened as I stared at her, dressed in what appeared to be a servant's uniform, with a faint, glowing aura surrounding her. Her face was pale, almost translucent, and her eyes glowed faintly in the dark. She lifted a hand and waved at us, a gesture so simple, so human, that it struck me with an overwhelming sense of calm. It was as if she were greeting us, as if she were at peace with us being there. I couldn't explain why, but the fear that should have been present just wasn't. There was something so comforting in her presence, so non-threatening, that it took all my effort to break my gaze and turn toward the others. We all stood frozen, watching as she slowly faded, her form dissolving into the walls, as though she had never been there at all. I tried to make sense of it, but it was hard. How could a ghost, one who was supposed to be haunting this place, feel so gentle? As the whispers faded into the background, we turned to leave the ballroom. It was then that the equipment began to malfunction. The lights flickered, and the EVP recorders began emitting static. I could hear faint footsteps behind us, echoing down the hallway, but when I turned, no one was there. Did anyone else hear that? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The others nodded, their eyes wide with uncertainty. My heart was racing, my palms sweaty, but the strange peace I felt earlier was gone. We hurried toward the exit, but the sound of footsteps followed us, growing louder with each step. I could hear my breath quicken as the others scrambled to gather their things, the tension in the air palpable. Finally, we made it to the van. We piled in, and I slammed the door shut, my hands trembling as I started the engine. But as we drove away, something caught my eye in the rear-view mirror. There, by the gate, stood Mary. She was watching us, her pale figure barely visible in the fading light, standing tall by the gate as if she had been waiting for us to leave. My heart skipped a beat. I wasn't sure what I had just witnessed, but I knew one thing for certain. Mary's presence was not one of malice. She wasn't here to haunt us. She was here to watch over us. As we drove further down the road, the image of her standing there by the gate stayed in my mind. It was as though she had been ensuring our safety, keeping a protective vigil over the manor as we left. We never spoke much about that night. There was no need. The feeling I left was not one of fear, but of peace. Mary's spirit I realized, had no ill intentions. She had watched over the manor for years, and now she was watching over us. Her presence, though strange, was a reminder that not all spirits are malevolent. The haunting at Hawthorne Manor ended not with a bang, but with a quiet understanding. Mary wasn't just a ghost. She was a guardian, and her duty was far from over.